Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my April 2024 reading wrap-up. Filling out my little library card tracker. I read 24 books in April and 4 of them were a part of my 24 books to read in 2024. That includes The Emperor in the Endless Palace, Ocean's Godori, To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods, and The Familiar. I will talk about all of these during my review portion. Next up is bringing my total in my reading tracker to 100 books. The big 3 digits I hit this month, and so I'm just filling in the rest of this to correspond with that with my yellow Tombow. I am liking how this is looking with switching up the colors for the tracker. I think it's going to look really good once I get everything filled in. Again, at this rate, I will probably hit my reading goal by halfway through the year, so by June, and then everything after that will just be bonus, but I'm excited to see how this will look when it is done. Next up, we have my TBRs for the year. The only physical book that I was able to get to this month was Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao, but it was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. And then for my Kindle or KU TBR, I read Her Body and Other Parts by Carmen Maria Morado. And then the 2 arcs that I completed on my TBR for this month was The Cats of Civil Crescent by Kayla Noel and The Fellowship of Puzzle Makers by Samuel Burr. My only book for the ABC Challenge this month is Hot Pot Murder by Jennifer J. Chow. For my favorite book of April, it was Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao, and then our book club book pick had a theme of a season in the title, so we picked A Winter's Promise by Christelle DeBoss. And then these are just my new releases for April, which I acquired a few of them, including Court of Wanderers, Otherworldly, Drangonfruit, The Familiar, Ocean's Godori, and A Letter to the Luminous Deep. Now on to the fun part, which is laying out all of the books that I read in April. I did my little trapdoor again, just covered in my flower stickers, where I put all of my demographic stats, but each of these is just individually selected and pulled from Goodreads in terms of the covers, and then I place them in my little Canva template and print them out on my sticker paper, which is linked below in the bio if you are looking for that specific thing that I use, as well as the stickers. But yeah, 24 books laid out. Try to find different ways to lay out these monthly spreads is what I probably spend the most time on, but it's definitely one of my favorite things to do with each of these wrap-ups every month. And I just love seeing how all of the books that I've read during the month look. I haven't put any ratings with any of the books that I read other than in the review process, so I don't know, if you want to see what I rate every book in terms of 1 to 5 stars, let me know in the comments, but for right now I just kind of like how this all looks without having the ratings included in this spread. But for my demographics in particular for the month of April, as I said before, I read 24 books, and for the demographics, 15 of those books were by Caucasian authors, 7 were by API authors, 2 were by LGBTQIA+ authors, and 2 were by Latinx or Hispanic authors. Then for the genre, 10 of them were fantasy, 7 of them were mystery. I am really cranking on my mystery reads this year. 5 of them were sci-fi, 3 of them were LGBTQIA, 2 of them were young adult, 2 were romance, and 2 were graphic novels. And then for my specific tags that I like to track, 14 of the books I checked out from the library. 8 of the books I read were advanced copies that I received. I own 8 of the books that I read. 2 I listened to on Everand, and then 2 I listened to on Spotify through their audiobook service. And then when it comes to ratings, 2 of the books I read, I rated 5 stars. 11 of the books I read, I rated 4 stars. I gave 10 books 3 stars, and then 2 of the books I read, I rated 2 stars. And then for the formats, 70% of the books I read, I listened to in audiobook format, and then 30 of them I read in digital format. And then for the page count, 4% of them were over 500 pages. 61% of them were between the 300 and 500 page range, and then 35% of them were under 300 pages. Now moving on to the review portion of my wrap-up, starting with the first book that I read in April, The Emperor and the Endless Palace by Justinian Huang. Across these seemingly unrelated timelines, woven together only by the twists and turns of fate, two men are reborn lifetime after lifetime. Within the treacherous walls of an ancient palace and the boundless forests of the Asian wilderness to the heart-pounding cement floors of underground rave scenes, our lovers are inexplicably drawn to each other, constantly tested by the world around them. I am a sucker for love stories that span multiple lifetimes, and this book did focus on that premise over the span of centuries and continents, but the execution for me fell well short. Something that is almost always the case when you adopt this story structure is running the risk of readers preferring certain storylines over others, and this book was no exception. I vastly preferred one of the stories over the other two, and only slightly. I found most of the characters within this romance to be extremely self-gratifying and in the most excessive way. So unfortunately, I did not like this book as much as I was hoping to, so I gave it 3 stars. Then we have The Foxglove King by Hannah Whitten. I read this in preparation for the sequel that came out in April, The Hemlock Queen. And so when Lore was 13, she escaped a cult in the catacombs beneath the city of Blair, only to end up in the Sainted King's court 10 years later, after it is discovered that she possesses rare death magic. Guarded by Gabriel, a duke-turned monk, and the continually running up against Bastian, the king's knower-do-well heir, Lore tangles in politics, religion, and forbidden romance as she attempts to navigate a debauched and opulent society. The first entry into this new fantasy romance was very enjoyable, a main character with grit and a mysterious past going up against a host of men who either want to use her or her power for their own gain. The relationship between her, Gabe, and Bastian have the potential to subvert your typical love triangle and go the way of a polyamorous relationship, and I for one am all for it. I gave it 4 stars. Next up is another arc that I received, The Fellowship of Puzzle Makers by Samuel Burr. This delightful tale follows a group of individuals who form an unlikely fellowship centered around their shared passion for puzzles, evolving into a found family brimming with heart and charm. At the heart of the story are 2 characters whose narratives unfold across different timelines, weaving together to create a rich tapestry of interconnected lives. As we journey alongside them, we are introduced to a colorful cast of characters, each with their own quirks and complexities. What sets the Fellowship of Puzzle Makers apart is its ability to evoke a myriad of emotions, from laughter to tears and everything in between. The genuine bonds of friendship and the sense of belonging that permeate the story tug at the heartstrings, leaving a lasting impression. Then we have another arc that I received, To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chang. Daughter of a conquered world, Ruing hates the invaders who descended from the heavens long before she was born and defeated the magic of her people with technologies unlike anything her world had ever seen. Blessed with the power of death, Ruing's gift is discovered by an enemy prince. He offers her an impossible deal. If she becomes his private assassin, her family will never starve or suffer harm again. But to accept his bargain, she must use the power she has always feared. The premise of the story supposedly set across 2 separate planets inspired by ancient Manchuria and Rome, but with modern technologies failed to translate effectively on the page. Moreover, the characterization of the main protagonist fell short of expectations, with her internal monologue proving frustratingly repetitive and her motivations appearing wishy-washy at best. I won't even go into the disjointed plot, lackluster world building, and uncomfortable and very forced romance between a colonizer and the person he's subjugating. I didn't really enjoy this book at all, and there is a ton of other discourse on here, so I won't go into it, but I gave this book 2 stars. Then we have The Book That Wouldn't Burn. This is the first in this series by Mark Lawrence. The Book That Broke the World came out in April, so I wanted to get this one read, and it was a lofty one, but I really enjoyed it. This book is about a boy who has lived his whole life trapped within a vast library, older than empires and larger than cities. A girl has spent hers in a tiny settlement out on the dust where nightmares stalk and no one goes. Their stories spiral around each other across worlds and time. This high fantasy adventure chapter was so engrossing I could not stop reading it once I started, centered around two very different yet eerily similar characters in their quest to find their place in the world. This story takes you across worlds and time in which a library and the books within have the ability to transport you to various places and points in time. Our two main characters eventually cross paths during their journeys and form an unlikely connection that will change their worlds. This first book in the series ends on a cliffhanger, and I for one cannot wait to see what happens next. Then we have The Deep Sky by Yume Kitasei. It is the eve of Earth's environmental collapse. A single ship curries humanity's last hope. 80 elite graduates of a competitive program who will give birth to a generation of children in deep space. But halfway to the distant but livable planet, a lethal bomb kills 3 of the crew and knocks the Phoenix off course. Asuka, the only surviving witness, is an immediate suspect. This was such a fascinating sci-fi thriller centered around our main character, Asuka, and her experience both on the ship bound for Planet X and her experience as a candidate for the program that will choose the elite of the elite to be part of this mission. Asuka's imposter syndrome is so relatable, but her cleverness and tenacity make her so easy to root for. While there is a bit of a mystery at the forefront of the story, it's Asuka's journey from refugee to humanity's last hope that kept me turning the page. I gave it 4 stars. Then we have another sci-fi, and this is Annibot by Sierra Greer, a powerful provocative novel about the relationship between a female robot and her human owner, exploring questions of intimacy, power, autonomy, and control. Annibot was created to be the perfect girlfriend for her human owner Doug, designed to satisfy his emotional and physical needs, but as she begins to explore human traits such as curiosity, secrecy, and longing, she starts to become more human, which means becoming less perfect in Doug's eyes. This book was so fascinating. The premise is extremely simple, and the scope is set mostly within the confines of Doug's apartment, but as Annie begins to become more self-aware and her AI becomes more complex, so does her understanding of the world and the relationship between her and Doug. I really could not recommend this book enough. There is so much to unpack within the pages of this story, and with the way AI is beginning to become more ingrained in our day-to-day, it's only a matter of time before the plot of this book will become a reality. I gave it 5 stars. Then we have one of the graphic novels that I read this month, and this was by far my favorite, The Marble Queen by Anna Kopp. Princess Amelia's kingdom, Marion, is in shambles after months of their trade routes being ravaged by pirates, and now the only seemingly option left is for her to save it through a marriage alliance. When she gets an exorbitant offer from the royalty of Iliad, a country shrouded in mystery, Amelia accepts without question and leaves her home to begin a new life. But she lands on Iliad shores to find that her betrothed isn't the country's prince, but the recently coronated queen, Celira. This graphic novel reminded me a lot of Nimona in terms of its political intrigue and the heartfelt relationships that develop throughout the story. Amelia is definitely a sweet and innocent bystander in most of the events of the story, but as her and Celira's romance grows, she begins to emerge as a more confident and courageous protagonist. While there were a few plot holes that never got addressed and the illustrations weren't anything that would make this stand out among its peers, I still really enjoyed it, and one thing the artist definitely got right was Celira. Heart eyes for days for her character art. I gave it 4 stars. Now for my final reviews of this wrap-up, we have Ocean's Godori by Elaine Ucho, a thrilling adventure across the solar that delivers hyperkinetic action sequences and irresistible will they, won't they romance alongside its nuanced exploration of colonialism and capitalism. Ocean's Godori ultimately asks, what do we owe our past? How do we navigate our present while honoring the complicated facets of our identity? What can our future hold? Chow's debut novel introduces readers to a ragtag group of space misfits who band together to support a loyal yet insubordinate new crewmate when her best friend is accused of murder. What sets Ocean's Godori apart is its emphasis on character development over plot or technical accuracy. Cho weaves a rich tapestry of personalities, each member of the eclectic crew bringing their own quirks and complexities to the table. As the story unfolds, we witness the bonds of friendship and loyalty that form between these unlikely allies, transforming them into an intergalactic found family. I really enjoyed this one and gave it 4 stars. Then we have Leigh Bardugo's newest book, The Familiar. This was definitely different than anything else she's written, and it is basically takes place in a shabby house on a shabby street in the new capital of Madrid. Luisa Catado uses scraps of magic to get through her days of endless toil as a scullion. But when her scheming mistress discovers the lump of a servant cowering in the kitchen is actually hiding a talent for little miracles, she demands Luisa use those gifts to better the family's social position. Determined to seize this one chance to better her fortunes, Luisa plunges into a world of seers and alchemists, holy men and hucksters, where the line between magic, science, and fraud is never certain. But as her notoriety grows, so does the danger that her Jewish blood will doom her to the Inquisition's wrath. This is by far one of Bardugo's slower-paced stories, but I ate it up. Luisa is an incredibly complex and engaging main character, and her journey through this book was wrought with hardship and determination. Her will to not only survive the hand she's been dealt, but make a better life for herself set within the Spanish Inquisition time period setting kept my attention throughout. I gave it 4 stars. And then we have my favorite book of the month, Iron Widow by Xiran J. Zhao. The boys of Huasha dream of pairing up with girls to pilot Chrysalis's giant transforming robots that can battle the mecha aliens that lurk beyond the Great Wall. When 18-year-old Zitan offers herself up as a concubine pilot, it's to assassinate the ace male pilot responsible for her sister's death. But she gets her vengeance in a way nobody expected. She kills him through the psychic link between pilots and emerges from the cockpit unscathed. She is labeled an Iron Widow. To tame her unnerving yet invaluable mental strength, she is paired up with Li Shimin, the strongest and most controversial male pilot in Huasha. Everything about Iron Widow was right up my alley: female rage against the patriarchy, a poly-romance instead of the dreaded love triangle, a fascinating fantasy world and magic system based off Chinese mythology, and a crazy reveal at the end that has me salivating for the next installment. I gave it 5 stars. And lastly, we have my final read of the month, Her Body and Other Stories by Carmen Maria Machado. In Her Body and Other Parties, Carmen Maria Machado blithely demolishes the arbitrary borders between psychological realism and science fiction, comedy and horror, fantasy and fabulism. While her work has earned her comparisons to Karen Russell and Kelly Link, she has a voice that is all her own. In this electric and provocative debut, Machado bends genre to shape startling narratives that mapped the realities of women's lives and the violence visited upon their bodies. As with most short story collections, there's going to be stories you like more than most, and that was the case here. While the themes were similar, there were some stories that I absolutely loved, such as The Husband Stitch and Inventory, while others I found myself eager to get through as quickly as possible or skipped altogether. But as is the case with Carmen's writing, she still infuses each story with her immersive writing and visceral imagery. I gave this 3 stars. But here is the full flip through of my April 2024 reading wrap up. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future videos. And until next time, everyone, happy reading.